What's going on, people? Terrell Harris from the Open Box, where our vision is to make wholeness more accessible. It is roughly 5 or 6 days after the completion of my first marathon. I actually did the Marine Corp Marathon out in DC. The craziest experience, probably one of the most challenging things, if not the most challenging thing I've ever done and completed in my life. 26 point, well, they say 26.2. My watch said 26.7. So technically, in my mind, I actually ran an ultra marathon. But it was a extremely tough and extremely rough race. The first maybe 2.5 to 3 miles was strictly uphill. The terrain was a little bit challenging in terms of running on the highways because a lot of the highways were tilted either left or right. But I was actually able to finish. I finished a lot slower than I expected. Mainly because I experienced something I hadn't experienced before. So for me, in terms of training, I knew I would lose a lot of salt from sweat. But this particular day was super windy, and it was probably, when we started the race, it was probably around 55 degrees. So I didn't pay attention to the amount of salt I was losing, mainly because I didn't know I was sweating because I was dry most of the race because the wind was it was so breezy that I would stay dry, so I didn't even think to touch my face or anything like that to see how much salt I have. So at around I probably hit the wall at around mile 15 or 16. I could feel myself starting to dwindle a little bit. But one of the good things is I actually placed Brooke, my dad, and her mom at like mile 17. So I saw them and was able to kind of push through mile 17. And then I had a couple of my other buddies I was training with at around mile 18, and one of my friends actually got me from mile 18 to like mile 19 to where like the bridge is, the 14th Street Bridge. And at that point I was pretty much dead. I mean, I could run, but I couldn't push myself at the pace I was trying to maintain, so I was kind of chugging and skipping along. So I get to the bridge. And I've been warned that the bridge is zombie land because that's like mile 19 through 20. That I felt like I was in a movie. It was so weird. Like everybody was spaced out. Some people were actually able to move through the bridge, but I had my music playing. I had the songs and everything that I wanted to have there that would actually push me over the bridge. None of that stuff worked. I passed, or bumped into one guy who had done the marathon before, or actually this was his first marathon, and he said he heard about the bridge too, and he kind of just crashed. And a lot of people actually looked defeated. So the energy of the bridge and the negative energy of the bridge, where people were actually kind of drained, that sucks you in unless you're able to zip past it. And to be perfectly honest, I kind of grade that part out. I try to go into like a meditative state. I was praying. I was saying mantras. I was doing all that stuff just to get past the bridge. So the bridge aspect is kind of foggy to me now. As I'm getting to the bridge, I'm looking at my watch because I wanted to beat the 4:29 pace. And at that point, I knew I wasn't gonna beat the 49 or the 4:29, 4 hours and 29 minute mark. So at that point, I hit the bridge. I'm already defeated then. And then when I noticed that I wasn't going to be able to make the time I wanted to make, then I was super defeated. So I actually felt at this point like quitting because all the training I had put in was to beat this certain mark. And I knew I wasn't going to do that. So, I think I stopped for a little bit, and then I was like, well, all right, let me set a secondary goal. The secondary goal was to finish the race sub 5. So and what was disheartening is people that I was training with that were much slower than me were actually passing me, and I was like, all right, I gotta kind of tune all this out because they're running their own race. So I just have to try to finish up strong. So we get to Crystal City. That's crazy. I'm really dead. My muscles were so tight at that point, I guess because I lost so many electrolytes, that if I would try to run a certain pace, like my whole body felt like it was going to spaz up. So I had to run like extremely slow pace. So I get to overpass by the Pentagon. So I'm going through like this little tunnel or whatever, and I'm thinking, all right, I can hit this finish line. It's gonna be close, but I can hit it around 5 hours or a little bit less. And I trip. I can laugh at it now because it's actually funny because the overpass was kind of dark, and I trip on a rock. So I tripped on this rock, and it actually, like, I actually thought I pulled my groin muscle. Like, I spazzed up completely, and I actually had to pull over, and I actually thought I wasn't going to be able to finish. But at that point, I was like, I'll crawl to the finish line if I had to. So first goal was to beat a 4:29 mark. Second goal was sub 5, and after tripping on the rock, that was out the door. So during the race, I had to readjust. So after tripping on the rock, I readjusted and was like, you know what? You're probably less than a half a mile out. Just go ahead and finish the race, get your medal, and be done. So I was able to get to the end. We come up on maybe a couple of 100 feet right before the finish line. And it's this crazy incline. So at the end of the race, I could see the finish line and stuff. And I get there, and it's this crazy hill. So at that point, and maybe I'll purchase some of the pictures. You can see me on the phone because I called Brooke. I'm like, hey, man, I don't know how exactly I'm going to finish this. There's this crazy hill in front of me. I need you to actually push me or give me some encouragement. So she gets on the phone. She puts me on speaker, and she's there with my dad and her mom. So they're screaming and encourage me, and they get me through the gates. So I finished the race, but to be perfectly honest, I was so disheartened by not being able to meet some of my goals that, I mean, I got the medal, and people were, you know, super excited. Family was super excited, and I still hadn't been able to celebrate the actual fact that I've done something that probably 99% of the world will never do, which is complete an actual marathon. So there's actually so many life lessons wrapped up in this actual experience. So one of the major things that comes up is that you have to run your own race. So whenever you're pursuing a goal, some people may actually have similar goals to you, and they may actually be, you know, running on the same path, but everybody goes at a different tempo, everybody goes at a different pace. And if you focus on trying to beat somebody next to you, or look behind you, or try to catch up to somebody in front of you, it actually can prevent you from hitting your goal when you want. You may be moving too fast, or you may get distracted by some of the things that you're missing, or some of your steps. So I would say in any goals that you have, be sure that you're focused and honed in on what you're doing, and don't focus on the competition, because ultimately, although some of us may be in industries where we feel there's competition, for the most part, most of what we do, there's room enough for us to succeed in a manner that would be satisfying to us. So that actually goes into defining what success is. So a lot of for me, I set these lofty goals. So my goal was I had a primary goal, which was 4 hours and 29 minutes. Secondary goal was 4:14. Now, mind you, this is my first marathon. Prior to this year, I hadn't ran more than 7 miles. So we set these lofty goals, and we define success. So say, for instance, one of us or somebody out there may have a business. Success for you may be reaching $1 million. I'm going to say something pretty lavish, or I'll put something out there pretty lavish. So success for you may be $1 million, $2 million, or something like that. But if you, let's just say you were in your business and you only reached $800K or $200,000 or $500,000, and that's all profit, have you really actually failed? So for me, I finished the marathon. So did I actually fail what I was trying to accomplish? Now, mind you, like I said, I had these lofty goals that I didn't achieve, but ultimately I didn't fail. Everybody, for the most part, gets the same medal at the end. So when you set your goals and you may not hit the mark that you were actually aiming for, be sure to be able to take in the fact that you were still successful and you still made it forward. So even if you fall somewhere a little bit lower than what you were achieving, be sure to celebrate your success, even though you might not reach the goal, because ultimately you could actually you'll be able to either try again, or you'll be able to try to measure your current situation, or you can put your current situation as a baseline, which will actually help you reach the ultimate goal that you're trying to reach. The next point I wanted to point out is when you do things or you participate in things that you don't have any experience in, the best thing to do is to get a coach. Now, I didn't have a coach just because, you know, I'm a little bit overconfident as it comes to some of my athletic skills, and I figure YouTube could push me through some of the situations, books and stuff like that. But ultimately, I think if I would have had a coach, I think you know, they could have warned me of some of the stuff. They could have actually prepared me for some of the nutritional stuff that I needed to deal with. So for whatever you're doing, either find a coach or a mentor or somebody in your arena who's going to be willing to help you and willing to kind of push you through the hurdles, or willing to be willing to share their knowledge with you. Because although we could read books, we could look at YouTube clips, I think it will serve more valuable for us to actually have somebody that's been in our situation. Now, although they've been in our situation, you may find a mentor or a coach. Despite that, you're still going to have to run your own race, and you're still going to have to experience some of the things for yourself. They may be able to tell you some of their pitfalls, but ultimately, once you put your own feet to the pavement, it's going to be a totally different experience for you than it was for them. So those are the actual life lessons I learned. And the funny thing about it is I talk about not being able to celebrate some of my successes. So even earlier this year, I actually ran a 20K, which is a little bit less than a half marathon. So you can see I got a medal there, and I actually kind of just tossed this medal aside, mainly because I was so focused on, you know, getting the Marine Corp Marathon. And I actually realized, like, wait a minute, I really need to pay attention to this, because this is my first running medal, and it's actually, at this point, this was my longest distance. So celebrate your successes. Go ahead and pace yourself. Run your own race, with whatever you're trying to achieve. Get a coach, and remember, although that your coach is going to be able to help you and push you through some of the hurdles, remember that when you start to run your own race or start to try to achieve your goals, that it's going to be your own experience. And actually, one last point is, like, during your experience, whatever you're trying to chase or whatever you're trying to do, one thing you have to be able to do is make adjustments as your journey goes on. Because if you don't make an adjustment, you will be liable to either hurt yourself or mess up your goal. Because let's be clear, if I were to try to continue at the same pace that I was maintaining from mile 1 through 16, if I were to try to continue at that same pace, I definitely would have hurt myself and wouldn't have been able to finish the race. So be able to be flexible is just what I'm trying to say. And remember this. If I could actually run a marathon, you could achieve anything you want. Like I said, I hadn't ran past 7 miles prior to this year. When I hit 10 miles, 10-mile mark for the first time in my life, I thought this was going to be impossible. But just I kept pushing. I kept with the training. I kept with the plan. So keep pushing on your dreams. Keep pushing with anything you do, and you'll be able to achieve the wildest things in your imagination. Peace and blessings. Hope this helps. Visit all the links below. I'm Mr. Terrell Harris on Twitter. You can find me and the blog at the Open Box. Peace out. Where's the